So for the context of this panel, when we talk about digital health and mobile health, we're focusing our scope on mobile technology, wearables, algorithms, software as a medical devices, digital therapeutics, and digital biomarkers. What is your perspective? How do you perceive the implementation of these technologies happening in clinical trials today? And what is your role? How do you enable the implementation for sponsors?
We're a little bit different of a technology than some of the ones we've heard about today. We're not patient-facing, we're actually clinician-facing, specialist-facing, the ones that are making that medical moment of truth in that time of what to do with a patient. Do I treat this patient? Do I enroll them in this trial? So from an implementation standpoint, we picked a beachhead that was really sticky at that point of stroke. At that time, care coordination was hard. There wasn't really AI. We kind of paved the way for the CAD-T process with FDA in triage. And because we have built products for clinicians from an implementation standpoint of when we need to look at rolling out clinical trials at sites, it's much easier because we have really high-level engagement, not just across neuro service line, across oncology service lines, across cardio, vascular. We have a ton of active users who view alerts and look at them within 5 minutes of them coming across on their mobile device. And with that, we are able to work with sponsors to look at hard to enroll in clinical trials, whether it's rare disease, underdiagnosed, misdiagnosed, care coordination, and take that algorithms that we have developed and really augment them to meet the criteria of inclusion-exclusion criteria in a meaningful way. Software as a medical device has different regulatory clearance pathways and requirements, so we're a little bit more flexible than if you're going to get a drug approved or, a typical med device. So from an implementation standpoint, we also put support behind it, really to help support the sponsors, right? Because we have the ground level relationships with the clinicians and physicians, but we also have a team of ClinOps that help support and push through to get the trials stood up, help support, give site updates, and really work through any of the regulatory process. And then we have a team that monitors engagement. How often are the physicians engaging? How are they looking at the alerts? Is there a breakdown in the research process that we can help with? So we really, from a scalability standpoint, I think have found a really clear path. We're in about 1,200 hospitals and some of the biggest research institutions that help roll out clinical trials just as easy.
Thanks, Jamie. So for the next question, I want to stick with you again, Jamie, as we're talking about technology and the vendor side. We heard earlier from the panel on the digital divide that despite the great intentions that we all have in implementing technology, technology can become a barrier to access for clinical trials. Especially for those populations that are not used to it, that don't know how to use it necessarily, or don't necessarily have access to it. So we talked about how decentralized trials can improve access to clinical trials, but they can also reduce access if we don't do it the right way. On top of that, you add that it's not only patients, but you have sites that need to be used to this technology, and very importantly, our sponsor staff, our clinical teams. So it creates this very complex path to adoption and certainly to scale. So from the vendor side, what do you do to at least reduce this burden of what the technology can bring? And how do we ensure that technology itself is not the barrier?
When you look at health systems, a lot of the hub and spoke models, right? It's really not just focusing on the hub where that patient will likely be enrolled, it's what's happening out in the community in their feeder systems. And that's really where we're actually able to make an impact as well on diversity and health disparity, because you go out into the community where most of the time there isn't this opportunity for this technology to exist, and you work with those sites to help connect them with the larger quaternary referral center. And we work by understanding how patients come in and out of the system and where do they flow, and we work with mapping the workflow. And I think being a cloud-based solution, we're able to tailor and implement and augment that workflow very easily. So when you work with the sites to understand it, you make sure that you're expanding out into the referral network. And even if it's not, they would refer for treatment, but there's nowhere within 100 miles that is offering this clinical trial. How do we start bridging those relationships to clinicians to bring that benefit to all of the patients out in the community? So it starts with understanding how patients come in and out of the system, and then really scaling it across to make sure you have all the critical stakeholders. And I think if you give them technology that isn't a one-off, right? It's like it becomes part of their daily workflow and how they look at patients, how they refer patients, how they enroll patients. It then becomes much easier to get that adoption across and give the support to the outlying facilities.
I'm sure we have some success stories to share, something that is very positive about the implementation of wearables, digital technologies, algorithms, and so on and so forth. So Jamie, I want to give you the opportunity to talk about that. Any success story, any potential patient benefit that has resulted from any of the implementations?
Yeah, so we're currently working with a number of different sponsors in different trials, some pharma, some med device. A lot of the competing trials, right? There's a lot of competition in the same space right now. So we've had really good success in scaling up pretty quickly to really maximize patient enrollment, right? Getting and supporting our sponsors so they get to market quicker with their device or their therapeutic. I would say that by, in some of the trials that we're running right now on the med device side, being able to broaden out that screening. I was just at Mount Sinai 2 weeks ago and meeting with the PI, and he was like, well, because we've turned on Viz now for this trial and we're able to screen and look at enrollment data in the real time, I actually found 4 patients out into the community that I was able to bring into the main Mount Sinai and then accelerate their kind of clinical trial enrollment. So we overall see about 3x increase in enrollment, but we also look at other endpoints as well as measures and really what is the impact on the patient at the end of the day. So for this trial, bringing that patient in, they had better outcomes, less length of stay in the hospital, less disability, and was able to go home much quicker.
We have about 2 minutes left. In those 2 minutes, I want to give each one of you a chance to say some parting words as we continue to work together on digital health, mobile health technologies for clinical trials. So maybe 30 seconds each.
We're kind of in a historical pivotal moment in the world and in healthcare specifically, as well as clinical trials, and really partnering together across industry, the vendors, the CROs, the sponsors, to build true awareness of what this technology can do and how it can move science forward, and really not to be afraid of it. I think a lot of times there is, especially at some of these larger organizations, because of a lack of knowledge or understanding, there's a fear around it, but it will help move the trials forward. It will help you get to your end goal much quicker. So just working together, partnering, building awareness, and educating the masses.